Hello and welcome to another episode of the GCSUNScast, a Gold Coast Suns show by fans for fans. And it would not be possible without the help of our Patreon sponsors, Dale Snelling, Jack Stad, Paul Vosti, Robbie Fiorini, Brodie Burgess, Kate Kelland, Chris Moore, Tom Kim and Tim. Thank you so much for your support, and you can join our Patreon sponsors by heading on over to patreon.com/GCSUNScast. We're also up on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, and wherever you like to get your podcasts from, so like, subscribe, and review. But today's first guest is Eliza Reilly, a sports journalist at the Gold Coast Bulletin. Welcome to the show, Eliza.
G'day, Shane, and as always, thanks for having me and all the other guests you've had over the past few weeks. You've got a great thing going, and it's fantastic to be part of it.
Oh, thanks for that, Eliza. Thanks for giving us some of your time as well. And I can imagine it's quite busy for you these days.
It is. I mean, I'm not complaining, though, because we had such a sort of barren period with all the COVID. You know, every day the league was getting cancelled or shut down. So I'm actually relishing the busyness for once. So I'm very happy to have sport back, Suns and community sport. So no complaints here.
And you play some community sport, don't you? In speaking to you, you said you had training. I assume you had some sort of AFLW training?
Well, not quite AFLW standard, Shane, but no. I do play for the Broadbeach Cats. We'll give a bit of a plug to them. So if you're looking for a women's footy team on the coast, the Cats are definitely the one to come to. So we've had 4 games so far, 1-2, lost 2, and we'll see how we go the rest of the year, but fingers crossed.
How is women's footy on the coast at the lower league? Like, what sort of sides do you play? I assume you've got Labrador, and I think Coolangatta have a side as well, don't they?
Yeah, so you've basically got your QAFLW, which is your state league, and then, same as QAFL men's. So in that league, you've got Bond University and Coolangatta Bluebirds. They're both, sitting 1 and 2 in the ladder respectively, so really exciting in that league. And then you move down to Division 1, which is the one the Broadbeach Cats are in, and it's actually quite a Gold Coast-centric league this year. So we've got, us, Burleigh, Southport Sharks have entered a women's team this year, their first ever senior women's team. Then you've got the likes of Burleigh, Robina. I feel like I'm missing one more, but people can go look it up. So not a lot of driving for us to Brisbane, so it's actually been really enjoyable this year.
Yeah, I can imagine. That was probably one of my pet hates when I played for Robina 10, 15 years ago now. The amount of driving up to Brisbane and further was just ridiculous for a Saturday afternoon playing footy. It sounds like AFLW, with the Suns AFLW side coming in, it sort of elevated the status of the QAFLW and the likes. Do you feel like you've seen a noticeable improvement or increase?
100%. I mean, looking at the pure numbers-wise, we've had a number of, Gold Coast clubs who haven't previously had women's sides to put their hand up for that. Sharks are one. Surfers Paradise have started a women's team in the past few years, so the Demons are in the women's league. So pure numbers-wise, definitely an increase. And talent-wise as well, obviously having that AFLW team to aspire to, there's so many girls sort of joining up to the game, and girls coming from other sports as well. I mean, some of the cross-coders we're seeing are absolutely incredible and can easily sort of go up to that level and match it with some of the girls who've been playing their whole life. So it's a really exciting time for women's footy at the moment, and especially in Queensland. People always, Victoria's always seen as the, talent pool of Australia, closely followed by WA in, most people's eyes, but I reckon Queensland's probably overtaking WA, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of improvement, especially in the men's side, and I can imagine now that we've got a Suns AFLW side, and the success of the Brisbane AFLW side in the early years has really sort of skyrocketed the potential for women to play elite sport at the highest level. So that's really encouraging, and we're seeing that come through the academies. I mean, Lauren Bella was in a rugby league family as 2 years ago, and now she's now she's converted her. She's a Suns player after being in the Suns academy for 2 years. We're seeing a really strong spike in talent coming from Queensland. So really looking forward to that. I think I saw something the other day about the Suns Academy. I think this might have been the men's though. But just the amount of talent that is starting to come through and the quality, because in the past we've had blokes like Michael Voss who would have been in the Suns recruitment zone if they existed back then. But now we're seeing more of these sorts of players that would normally get passed over sort of come up and aspire to that level.
100%, yeah.
So how did you see the Suns in their first AFLW season? Like, they surprised a lot of us, especially qualifying for the final. The final game probably wasn't a great success, but just to get there was a huge achievement, I thought.
Exactly that. I mean, they surprised so many, you know, all the sort of, as the Melbourne media tend to like to do, they sort of write off, you know, your sort of interstate teams early on in the season. So, I mean, personally, having, you know, seen the girls sort of training and getting to know them over the past few months, I thought they were going to be competitive, but in no way did I sort of, you know, lock them into a final spot. So to see them do that, albeit in very sort of strange circumstances, like they were still very much in the mathematical equation to make finals, had the season played out its final 2 rounds. But yeah, obviously to sort of get parachuted straight in, they definitely deserved their spot, and they did incredibly well to get there, especially, you know, looking at their list. They don't have the big names of some of the other clubs, but just you look across the whole field and it's just role players everywhere. And, you know, as a consequence of that, we've had some of these, you know, unknown names rise into prominence, and like you said, wasn't the best ending with the Fremantle game there, but they were just honestly knackered. You know, going to Perth, that 5.5-hour flight 2 times in 2 weeks, really did them over. So I dare say we'll see a better response from them in 2021.
So where do you think the improvement's going to come from for 2021 and beyond? Is it just the synchronicity of the players playing with each other for more than one season?
I think that's definitely going to be a huge factor, just with that time spent together, because you look at the likes of Fremantle, who we obviously played, they had 3 seasons to develop their list, develop their style of play, and it definitely showed in that final just how strong they were compared to a first-year side. So definitely, just having another pre-season under the belt, another pre-season to get that sort of conditioning and strength into the girls, especially the younger sort of ones as well. And, you know, just getting a bit more talent into the side. You know, the Suns were obviously in the sort of trade period at the moment, but by all sounds, they're very keen to sort of go through the draft, and they feel like, you know, the likes of Lauren Arends and Jade Progelli, who were sort of plucked out of obscurity, they feel like there's plenty more of those mature age talents out there. So we'll see what they sort of pick up in the next few months.
So with obviously no trade targets being linked to the Suns, the only confirmed change we've got is Maddie Roberts. She's gone on to play another sport, if I'm correct. Is that
so? Maddie is actually, so she's moved to New South Wales to join the New South Wales Fire Academy, actually. So she's done a bit of volunteer fire work in her time and just decided, you know, look, I really want to pursue this as a career, but they're not calling it a retirement. She's very much, you know, hoping to return to footy in the future, but she just couldn't pass up the opportunity, having been selected in the academy.
Oh, well, yeah, all the best to Maddie Robertson, and hopefully we do see her back in Suns colours in future seasons. So, you've had the AFLW season start off. I'm going to ask you now, what's one of your most memorable moments with the Suns? Would it be the AFLW season for the Suns, or is there something else that comes to mind?
Well, speaking, of the memorable moments, it would definitely have to be earlier this year, like getting to, like, similar to what Tom Boswell, my colleague at the Bulletin, did a few weeks ago, or last year actually, like just getting to spend a week with the squad and, you know, sort of go to the trainings, go to the line meetings, sit in on the sort of strategy sessions, and got to end up going down to Sydney with them as well to sort of watch them run out for their first ever AFLW game, which is a pretty incredible experience. But just sort of the build up to that moment, because it was so historic for the club, and getting to know all the girls personally, it's, you know, they could not be a better reflection of the club than those 30 girls who donned the Suns colours this year. So I just, there's a less memorable moment. Do you want to go there?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is, I don't know why, but when you asked me to name my most memorable, like my least memorable came to mind. This is a bit of a scoop for you, Shane, but basically earlier this year, I reckon Tom's the only person who knows this, Tom Boswell. I actually fainted at the Suns press conference.
The is it an AFLW one?
It was a joint one, so it was Took Miller and Paige Parker.
Oh yeah.
And it was announcing the trams, how they were painting their faces on the trams and generating a bit of interest there.
Yep.
And it was like dead heat of summer. Don't really know what came over me, but I hadn't really eaten that much that day, and I was standing there with my phone sort of recording Took speak and asking a few questions. And suddenly I just felt this wave of sort of nausea come over me, and I just sort of went, oh, geez, this is not looking good. So dead middle of the press conference, I walked away, and everyone's going, where's she going? And I just basically sat down in the tram stop and sort of woke up a few seconds later lying sideways, and I don't think to this moment anyone actually saw it.
Well, that's pretty impressive. I did work experience at the Gold Coast City Council in my teenage years, and I had a similar incident. I was standing up in the middle of like a meeting or something, and next thing I know, everyone's around me and I'm on the ground offering me a glass of water. I'm like, what happened? Oh, you fainted. Oh, okay. It's weird how that suddenly just comes all over you. Anyway, let's get back on track.
Memorable in the fact no one saw it, I reckon. So,
I've met Took before. He's a great bloke. I'm sure if he'd known, he would have rushed to your side to help you up and help you out.
Yeah.
So, who's your favourite Suns player then?
We'll start with the women's first. So the women's team has to be Kate the Spud Sermon. She's just an energizer bunny, and, you know, does miraculous things on the field as well. So can't go past Spud in the women's team. And moving over to the men's, is it too early to say Matt Rowell? Couple games in?
No, I think the entire Gold Coast fan base is in love with Matt Rowell. After 2 games, we were all on top of him, and I was tempted to name our best and fairest on the show the Matt Rowell Award, because after 3 straight games, like, there was just no point doing votes. It was just Matt Rowell every week. So you've probably got 2 favourite Suns wins then, I guess, a AFLW one and a men's one, maybe?
Yep, definitely.
All right.
We'll start with the AFLW. Can't really go past their first win against the Tigers. That was, you know, awesome day for the club, and just bit of a thriller in the fourth quarter there when the Tigers started fighting back. But the girls sort of held on and had that historic moment for the club. And then there was first ever home game. You had the big sort of fan photo where all the fans were allowed up onto the ground and took a huge team photo. So that was pretty unreal. Men's win. I know it's been mentioned on the podcast before, but I really enjoyed the win last year against the Fremantle Dockers, and Sammy Collins standing up in the last few seconds to take basically the winning mark against his old side. I thought that was pretty special. Yeah,
again, it's definitely one that's come up before, and definitely one that will keep coming up. That was a very special game. I wonder if Sam Collins feels the same way about that one as everyone else does. So back over to the AFLW, you mentioned the first win against the Tigers, and that does remind me that I don't think I've ever really spoken about the AFLW, but I came to the Suns' first game. I think they were GWS, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yep. So I came to watch that, And I thought, oh, I'm here to watch the Suns, support the Suns. But I ended up sticking around watching several AFLW women's games after that because of the aggression and the ferocity that women's players attacked the ball at. It was not lacking. It was almost on a similar level to what you'd expect from the men's side, or at least what we've dished up from the Suns men's side over the last few years. But it was certainly entertaining football. It's not for the faint of heart. They go straight in there and really put their bodies on the line. So I was really impressed by that.
I guess it's just, as you probably expect, women have fought, I guess, so hard to sort of gain prominence in the game, and they're still sort of copping flack from, people we don't like, sitting in their corners at home on their laptops. But yeah, I guess it's just sort of trying to validate their place in the game. They've had to fight harder than anyone else to sort of get a professional league. So, they'll go harder than, the most to sort of try and prove those doubters wrong.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job. I can only imagine as the AFL system gets more structured and they actually find a regular spot for the AFLW, because it feels like it's all over the place at the moment, trying to get enough games in and find the right spot of the year to play the games. I mean, we had the COVID issue this year, which threw it all out of balance, but they still need to work on that. And once they get that down pat, I think we're really going to see the competition just thrive as people know what to expect and when to expect it. All right, well, let's jump over to the match review for the Gold Coast Suns versus the Saints last week. It was a thriller for another Thursday night. That's 2 consecutive Thursdays the Suns have played, and both lost by less than a kick. So this one, I feel like this one's a bit easier to stomach. It was certainly an attacking brand of football and something that was amazing to watch. So the Gold Coast Suns, 11 goals, 874, were defeated by St Kilda, 12 goals, 678, a 4-point loss there. King with 3 goals, Miller, Powell and Rankin with 2. So the early criticisms I have from this game was there was no goalkeeper early, which allowed a lot of easy goals out the back to Richmond players. Either that or the players in defence probably needed to be a bit more accountable on their opponents. It just seemed like St Kilda were getting the ball out the back far too easy. Another criticism is our inefficiency at goal continues. So while it was a better result, 11 goals, 8, compared to previous weeks where the behinds have outnumbered the goals, I felt like we missed a lot of easy, gettable chances. How did you feel on that?
I feel like, definitely in the same ballpark of thinking as you. That, like you mentioned, the goalkeeper early, I guess the criticism of playing that really attacking brand of footy and, pushing as much as you can up the ground is sometimes get exposed out the back, and I feel like that's what sort of happened. And it's an interesting equation, how hard do you push up the ground with the risk of it coming back to bite you, and I feel like they're still trying to sort of find that balance a little bit. But yeah, just, I guess, fighting back and trying to will their way back into the contest was a really good sign from the boys. But just 4 points, it kills you in seasons like this when there's already less games than there would be in a regular season.
Yeah, that goes into the positives, just the ability to fight back, not just once but twice. So it looked like St Kilda were ahead. They had a couple of times had a run of 4 goals and got a few goals out, and the Suns were able to just steady and retake the lead both times. However, they just weren't able to do it the third time. But really encouraging signs. Some really aggressive gameplay. We saw Swallow take Swallow took a great intercept and passed it off to Rankin, who was able to spot Miller, who was running flat out forward into the goals in the first quarter. That was our second goal, and I think that was after the 4 consecutive goals to St Kilda. So just their constant desire to attack the ball and push it forward at all costs really, really helps create that entertaining brand of football and gives the fans something to be excited about.
Definitely, yeah. Just like you mentioned, that play with Swallow and Rankin, like how perfect was that kick? You could not have hit that kick better, streaming into an open goal. So more of that, please.
Yeah, definitely. Collins was fantastic in defence again. Like, he just keeps doing it every single game, and I don't understand how so many Vic media are bypassing him when it comes to all Australian defenders talks. He's just so... I'm lost for words, actually. But he's so important to the Suns. When he knows when to come off his man, he knows when to intercept, and he just does a good job at doing both.
I mean, as a defender at heart, in the Broadbeach Cats backline, I very much appreciate the craft of defenders, and he's someone I always watch when the Suns are playing, just to try and pick a few tips off him. But like you said, just others probably consider him underrated, but on the Gold Coast within the 4 walls, I think he's just about the first picked in defence every week.
Yeah, you'd think so. We'll jump ahead quickly to the news because Thompson returned for his first game since hurting his knee, and played 40 minutes of game time on the weekend in a scratch match. So he's coming back, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks, maybe before the end of the season, might start putting pressure to get into that backline. But I can't see Collins being moved from defence. So it probably then comes down to a question of whether the club decides to keep the same structure and maybe move Ballard out, or look at changing the structure up and go a bit taller in defence, because I feel like Thompson probably needs to play when he is there. But Colin's going to be his partner in crime, not his replacement.
Exactly. We have seen some clubs running with a bit of a taller backline. The Eagles have a pretty tall backline over in WA, but, we'll see whether that's something that actually works for the Suns and, experiment with it.
Yeah, well, let's move into the incredible ridiculous, and the incredible is... This is incredible! Isaac Rankin, mark of the round winner for, round 11 or round 10? But he's finally nailed one after being so close several weeks with either mark of the round or goal of the round nominations, and this week he is the winner for his specky on... I don't know the bloke's name who he took it on, but it was on the wing and took a great hanger in the last quarter, I think. This man, he does so much, doesn't he? He's a bums on seats sort of player, and I look forward to going to the footy now just to watch this guy play.
It's just, he's the ultimate showman. Every time he sort of, leaps into the air, whether it's on Jack Steele's shoulders or someone else's, your heart sort of goes into your mouth. But he just always seems to, if he doesn't take the mark, to something else miraculous. And, how do you reckon he sits with the rising star?
I think with Rao going out, I think, he's a shoo-in. He doesn't have the touches that some of his contestants might have, but he has the impact, and his impact, I think, is far greater. But I don't know how much of a Suns bias I'm bringing to this conversation. We all know that the media down in Melbourne pretty much run the show, and if they feel someone else is a better suited, they're going to push that agenda. I'll have to chat to I think we've got Riley Beveridge coming up in future episodes. I'll ask him what he thinks. Being a Carlton supporter, he might feel either way. But Isaac Rankin is fantastic to watch. And I was thinking today, going to the football tomorrow, I am really looking forward to seeing this kid play. And I don't think I've felt that way about going to a Suns game since Gary Ablett was playing for us.
That says a lot.
Yeah, it does. Just because you don't know what you're going to get from him when you go to a game. So yeah, Isaac Rankin once again. I think, just like I said earlier, Matt Rao should be the best on ground for the GCSUNScast. That we should just name the award after him. I'm starting to think we should name this incredible segment after Isaac Rankin, because it seems like every week he's the one providing the content. Next up is Ridiculous.
This is ridiculous!
Now, I don't normally like going after the umpires, but with the game on the line in the last minute, I don't understand how Patrick Ryder didn't give away a free kick when he basically jumped on Witts early before the ball was in the vicinity and didn't get anywhere near it. It may not have won the Suns the game because it would have given the Saints a chance to flood back in defence, but it certainly would have given the Suns a better chance, I would have thought, to get the ball inside 50 and maybe get that score that we needed.
It's an interesting one because you often see, very late in games, the umpires sort of putting the whistle away, especially in the close ones. But if the free kick's there, which it obviously was, you still got to pay it. And it's, if we could turn back time.
Yeah, so many situations the Suns have been in this season have resulted in being so close. Unfortunately, we haven't walked away with a lot of those wins this year. Last year we did, but we're seeing the improvement, and as these boys get more games into them, we will see the ledger swing the other way as we slowly start to learn how to win and get those wins from those sort of positions in the future. So the player ratings for this game, Rankin and Powell had career best games. Rankin 13 disposals, 2 marks, 13 pressure acts, 274 metres gained. Powell had 14 disposals, 5 rebound 50s. And following up in the midfield, we had Tuke Miller with a season best performance, 7 tackles, 21 pressure acts and 18 disposals. And Greenwood with 22 disposals, 15 contested, 5 tackles and 25 pressure acts. So I criticised last week our midfield for not bringing the effort, the intensity, not bringing the pressure and the tackles. And Tuke Miller and Greenwood stepped up and delivered this week, back to their best. Tuke Miller's really come along and looks like a genuine, I don't know whether I'd say A grade, but certainly B plus grade midfielder. He's having a big impact when he gets the ball. And
Definitely,
And Greenwood is doing so well in getting the ball out of tough situations and winning it for our other players. Powell surprised me as a career best game, but he did kick 2 goals and looked pretty good when he did get hands on the footy.
Definitely, and when you're impacting on the scoreboard, it's very hard to, move yourself out of the side. So I was really impressed with this game on the weekend, and just that pure sort of gut running up and down the ground, and like you said, 5 rebound 50s just shows he's doing it at both ends at this point. Yeah.
And did anyone else stand out for you? I guess being a defender at the Broadbeach Cats, maybe you had your eye on the defender that got overlooked.
Well, we've already sung Sam Collins' praises, so I feel like that's the pick of the defenders for me.
Well, what about Jack Lukosius? He coughed up a kick out, which directly to a St Kilda opponent, who then slotted that goal. How often does that sort of stuff happen? I feel like it shouldn't happen, but it clearly does, doesn't it?
Well, I have been taking a few kickouts in the last few weeks, so I'm not going to throw myself under the bus and say I turned it over. I have seen a few horrors in local footy over my years, but not off my own boot, Shane. So,
all right. Well, all in all, I thought it was a fantastic game of football. Certainly very entertaining to watch, and kind of annoyed I didn't go to that game last week, but it was a bit late. So I just had to, go home, stay home, watch it on telly, and go straight to bed when it was over. But yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's game against the Bombers. We've had some changes come in. Holman, Sexton and Sharp are out of the side. Fiorini, Corbett and Flanders are in. What do you make of those changes? I personally like them.
I like them as well. Corbett's been absolutely tearing it up in the twos, so it's been fantastic to sort of see him finally get his chance again in the senior side.
Have you been able to meet Corbett before?
No, but I have heard from Tom Boswell he's the sort of energizer bunny, so maybe him and Kate Sermon would be best mates. Yeah,
maybe. I've met him once. Yeah, he just talks so much, and you see him in those videos on the Sun's site. He just loves being in the spotlight and communicating with everyone. So really keen to see him come back in. He didn't set the world on fire last year when he came into the side, but I'm hoping with another season of pre-season and understanding the game structure, I'm hoping he can have more of an impact. He certainly looks like a player that could break the game open. Flanders comes in for his debut, replacing Holman, I presume. So a pressure forward that can go in the midfield and have an impact. Really excited to see what this kid can do. Had good raps on him. Was even touted as going as high as pick 5 in last year's draft. And the Suns snapped him up for a steal at pick 11. And Fiorini gets his shot back in the Suns side. He's been unlucky. He hasn't been able to break into the side, and when he does, hasn't been able to play in his preferred position. So it looks like he'll be replacing Sharp, and that means he could be playing a bit of wing, not his preferred position, but hopefully he can get some midfield rotations and have a bit of an impact.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because we know he's a great player, but he's just been, I guess, out of position when he has come in. So yeah, but it's a hard contested midfield to crack into at the moment.
It is. Sexton's probably the big out. I was a bit surprised by that. I thought Sexton had done all right lately, but obviously not.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he obviously set the world on fire last year, and he's been, by his high standards that he set last year, he's been down on those. But with someone like him who's got runs on the board, you'd think you'd sort of back him in for a few more weeks to try and regain that form. But obviously their sort of patience has run out.
Yeah, I saw a lot of calls for him to be dropped after that game last week. I didn't quite understand it because looking at his stats, he had a lot of pressure acts and was showing that he was doing a lot of work without the ball, which, in my opinion, is a bit unusual of Sexton. But I feel like that's something that's heavily rewarded in this under the coaching regime of Stuart Dew and co. Obviously not. Sexton finds himself up. Sharp finds himself out after a debut, which wasn't a great debut. It looked like he struggled with the pace of it. Did you notice much of Sharp when he was playing?
Well, being from WA myself, I always like to keep an eye out for the WA sort of kids, being blooded at AFL level. And yeah, to be honest, probably the same boat as you. Didn't notice too much of him, but we've set very high standards for debutants in Matt Rowell earlier this year. So hopefully he gets another crack at it at some point. But yeah, didn't quite set the world on fire and should have room to improve at that level.
Yeah, I suspect Sharp will get another opportunity. He looked great in the pre-season. Obviously, not being able to play regular practice matches, the scratch matches being all over the place. I think he's just struggling with that, not having the structure that he needs. So hopefully he can get back in there, and I expect Sharp to be a regular fixture of the Suns side next year. So this game looks like it's a really winnable game for the Suns, the way the Bombers have been playing. I think we're going to have a strong advantage in the ruck and the midfield. I'm not too sure about Essendon's forward line or defence to really comment how we're going to go down there. But if the Suns play the way they've been playing against St Kilda or the Bulldogs, I think we're a real chance at winning this game.
100%. And looking at Essendon's backline as it stands, it's actually pretty sort of inexperienced. Like Adam Sard is probably the most experienced bloke there. So it's a lot of, sort of second, third, fourth year players, and Sard sort of holding down the fort on that flanker spot. So I reckon there's a real chance for those tall forwards, the likes of King and Day, to sort of grab the Essendon backline by the throat here, and hopefully it's a bit of a tall timber combination, because, those blokes I know haven't been setting the world on fire in the past few weeks, so this could be the game that sort of turns it for that tall combination.
Yeah, and throwing a marking forward in there with Corbett certainly gives the Suns plenty of options to either go long down the line or lower their eyes and hit up a leading player. So hopefully we can see the Suns have a big impact on that scoreboard and test the Essendon defence. So who do you think the leading goal kicker for this game will be for the Suns?
Well, sticking with my tall forward theme, I'm going to go with Ben King. I'm picking him to have a big bag.
He was good last week. He's had a bit of a slump lately, but I felt like he broke out of that on the weekend. Maybe playing against his brother's side, or I don't know what, but he seemed to get the better of Jake Carlisle and really get himself into some good positions, earn a couple of free kicks, and take some good grabs.
Definitely.
The best on ground for the Suns?
Best on ground. I'm going to go midfielder, because we love picking the midfielders for these sort of things. I'm going to go Toot to sort of back up last week's form and have another big one.
Yeah, I like that. Toot Miller. I usually go for the easy beats in Greenwood or Swallow, but yeah, Toot Miller, I think he'll do well. He's really proving himself so far. So let's lock in Toot Miller for that one. Leading goal kicker, I'm probably going to go with... I love the story of Corbett. So let's go with Corbett, and if he kicks a bag, it's going to be in the papers on Thursday. Just how good Corbett is. So looking forward to that. And to close out to the show, we've got some... Well, it's a bit of late news, but we didn't discuss it last week. Matt Rowell has re-signed until 2023. So we were just talking off-air, Eliza, about how much you love Matt Rowell. And Bree touched on it earlier. Matt Rowell fan club just keeps going on, at least until 2023 now.
Exactly, and it just adds on the back of all the other young talents we've had signing up in the past few years as well. So, it's so good to see this change of the tide, and the young blokes, committing to the club, and at least getting another couple of years with them all sort of stuck together is going to be fantastic in the next few years. And I saw an interesting point on social media, Twitter the other day, saying within this Suns 2020 side, there's sort of signs of the Lions in 2018, just sort of losing close games, exciting young talented list. So wouldn't that be unreal? Top 4 next year, you reckon?
Oh, maybe. I was always a fan of the way the AFL does their fixture. If you finish in the bottom 6, then you're going to have an easier draw and so forth. But the way the fixture's going next year, it looks like the AFL might have a rolling fixture as a bit more fluidity, which could allow for compensation if teams start to rise up the ladder early. So, hopefully we can see the Suns dominate and then be rewarded and really test themselves against some quality opposition when that time does come. We were really keen to see the Suns play against Geelong earlier this year to see just how well they could test themselves. Unfortunately, we lost Matty Rowell in that one. But considering the outcome, I think the Suns did really well. I mean, we saw Geelong absolutely smash St Kilda last night. So they're not an easy team to beat either. All right, well, thank you for joining me tonight, Eliza. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to hopefully having you on the show again in the future where we can discuss more AFLW. And I can slowly learn a bit more about some of these players, because at the moment I think I could only name 3 AFLW players for the Suns off the top of my head. And that would be Kalinda Howarth, Paige Parker, and I would say Kate Sermon, but that's because you've just mentioned it. There's another one, Lauren Bella.
You can't even name the captain, Shane. Can't even have them spring to mind for you.
Sam Virgo? No, Kate Kessler? No, I'm thinking Tesla.
Leah Kessler.
Yeah, that's the one.
Almost.
I was getting mixed up with the assistant coach that the Suns have, Tate Kessler. Yeah. All right, well, thanks for that, Eliza. And, go Suns.
Go the Suns.